just looking at the date, it's the 30th of April, 2025, and we're here with Azrael and Elizabeth Kipp. Lovely to see you guys. We're talking about ancestral and transgenerational healing being the topic and the focus of the session today. And, I'm of the mind, I don't know about you guys, that, whoever shows up are the people that are meant to show up, and if it's just us, then that's what's meant to be, it is what it is. And if it's not, and the people come in or join at certain times, I'm not attached to anything. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Exactly. Also, it goes up on YouTube, so people will see the replay. And exactly, we're here to serve the moment.
That's so beautifully put. So beautifully put. So in about 6 minutes, I will ask you to start your segment, Elizabeth, and
Sure.
then at past, I'll ask you to start yours, if you would, and if that's okay with you.
Yeah, so thank you for that comment. It just made me aware of the wider field of listeners. Like when you're putting it on social media, if nobody turns up to the actual session, then the way that I speak and the process that I introduce will be for the wider audience that might listen later on, rather than something interactive in the moment. So,
okay. Well put. Yeah, I like that. So let's do introductions to begin with, shall we? So my name's Alexis Constantinou, and I'm Greek Cypriot, born and raised in London. My background is as a singer and singing teacher and metaphysical coach. I have trained in all kinds of spiritual fields, and I'm always learning. We're always at the beginning, I think. And how about you, Elizabeth? Tell us a little bit about you.
Oh, I'm sitting here just amazed that you're a Greek Cypriot. I had no idea.
Oh, really?
Which has meaning to me. So I'm just like,
that's interesting. Why does it have meaning?
Well, I have a client. So I'm an ancestral clearing practitioner. I'm a stress management and historical trauma specialist. I teach yoga. I'm a yoga practitioner. I'm an addiction recovery coach. All those things under under stress management. I have a client who came to me for ancestral clearing, who lives in Cyprus. And she wanted to learn how to do meditation too, which was kind of separate, but was kind of fun, especially for her. And when I started asking her about the lineage, it was so interesting because I didn't realize, she told me, Cyprus has been overrun so many times that it has no sense of its own. Like its roots and its origin are just, and I am telling you, that was a very interesting concept as an ancestral clearing practitioner to drop into that space.
Wow.
And it really took me back into it really took me back into much earlier times, where things were maybe almost back into before there were ships.
Were you seeing into other lives?
Well, the ancestral clearing practice is very interesting because it's we drop into the present moment, into the field that we're of the person and that we're working with. So it's a triangulation between the client, myself as a practitioner, and source. And my job really as a practitioner is to attune to the client, not hold space. It's really attuning, and helping them to, and kind of asking very kind of specific questions and listening carefully to kind of help them name what it is they want to clear, or find the path to what it is they want to clear. Because usually the path is through the body and the sensations, and you've been in the process, so you know what that we
Yeah.
kind of, where do you feel it in the body, and then we use that as a reference point. But ultimately, it's all the information that we need for the present moment is in the present moment. And because the past, present, and future is all in the present moment, yeah, we can access, absolutely, we can access that way, way past. Yeah, does that make sense?
Very much.
Okay.
Very much, yeah. And I love the wording that you used as well, because I was trying to describe, you know, what I personally experienced when I attended, you know, something that you do, Anu. It wasn't with you. I've not experienced it other than digitally in the past with you, you know, on another Sacred Segments. But it was the I'm trying to remember the type of therapy that it's called. Family constellations therapy.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
Which is when I experienced that, I was trying to explain what my experience was, and I was talking about a field. It's like setting up a field, but the way that you put it, Elizabeth, was very succinct. I know. Tell us about you and your work and your path and stuff. I'm just gonna put some myrrh on my hands because I feel like it's gonna like raise my vibe. You know, the essential oil myrrh. So I'm just gonna do that as I'm listening to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm gonna light some sage for a moment. Let's have a sage myrrh moment.
Nice. I've just been traveling in the car on the motorway, and you know, you get a little icky.
So, cutting a long story short, I began training as a psychotherapist when I was in my 20s, and I quickly felt that I didn't really belong to that kind of work. I felt like there was too much role playing, and I was seeking something more authentic. And then that was when I found my teacher in Osho family constellations, Swagito. And so I was traveling with him for maybe 13 years. Um, I would say I'm very much an Osho therapist. I'm not so interested in therapy. I'm more interested in presence and human relationship, and that as a priority over everything else. Um, Therapeutic tools are great. Family constellations is great. Somatic experiencing is great. Systemic ritual is great. This approach that I've never heard of before that you're offering, Elizabeth, I'm sure is great. But for me, it's no longer about approaches. It's more about me being in my presence of heart as a primary channel for presencing the other. And um, that's kind of where my work with collective trauma healing is growing out of now. It's growing out of my presence of heart, my love of family constellations and trauma healing, but my feeling of beginning to move beyond that a little bit and to kind of create my own language of being and language of facilitating. I feel like collective trauma healing is giving me it's reminding me of my belonging, basically. Um, so so that's where I'm at right now. The last couple of years I've been experimenting with different. I stopped working with my teacher about like physically, but psychically I've still been very much connected with him for about 4 or 5 years ago. And in the last 4 or 5 years I trained in relational presence. I started making music and released a couple of albums. I kind of took a break from the whole therapy field and I went in more of a creative direction. In the last year, I've been coming back now, and I feel like I'm finding my way. Um, I lost my way for a while, but that was all part of the journey and the process of being more authentic as a human, and as somebody that works with people. So my offering now is collective trauma healing. Um, my work is very much influenced by Osho and the orientation to love and meditation. Um, so in some ways, I think that's what um, differentiates, if you like. What's the? I think I've been watching too much Dragon's Den, but what's the USP? What's the unique selling point? I think it's that I'm really combining the therapy work that I'm offering with meditation, and I'm prioritizing meditation over the therapy, and then on top of that, um, I'm not really interested in doing much. I'm quite lazy, but it's becoming a gift.
I think maybe surrendered is a better choice of word.
Yeah,
Lady.
yeah.
Lady, rather, not lady.
Well, I'm kind of lazy in a way. I mean, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
let me tell you something, and then I'm gonna pass over to Elizabeth just for
yeah,
a
go on.
moment, and then we'll come back to you at 1:30. I just want to say that, out of all of the sacred segments that have ever happened, it was about a year ago that you were last on, Anu, and
Yeah, I think it was more like 4 or 5 years, wasn't it?
was it really that long?
I think it was a
No, it
long,
was a
yeah,
long time ago. But up until that point, I mean, there have been many since which have been incredible, and I've always felt an incredible vibration and spiritual presence, and something indescribable that's not possible to put your finger on. But when you did your work, Anu, like it was so authentic and so moving for me. I had never experienced anything like it, I have to say, you know. So really, this is before I met Elizabeth, and we've done work together, which has been amazing as well. Um, but I just want to say, you're saying negative things about yourself, but I just want to say
for
that you
me.
are the real deal. I've experienced your work,
Oh no,
as a you, Elizabeth. So don't do yourself down in any way saying that you're lazy. I think that you
oh
are
no,
tremendous.
lazy's not lazy. I don't mean lazy in a negative definition. I mean lazy in the sense that like I don't need to do much. Like yeah, I didn't mean it in a
Opportunity finds you.
I didn't mean yes.
Okay,
In a
I'm
negative.
very, very big on language, and I pick up on words, So I just had to clarify that with you. Okay, well, I'm intrigued and interested in hearing more. Uh, Elizabeth, let's hear from you, and if you're happy to start your segment, please do.
Sure. Thank you so much, Alexis. And thank you, Anno. Very interesting how you described your path, as really the core is presence. And the work that I do, kind of all the work I do, but the ancestral clearing, I always start there, is pointed at what is it that we're bringing to the moment that's blocking our ability to be present. And so, in my experience, we come into this world with imprints that we don't even know we have because we came in with them and then we're used to carrying them, and we don't know really how they're affecting us until we are actually do the family constellation work or the other work you do or this work or other work. So all kinds of different work that helps this to help us release that thing, that the imprint. And all of a sudden, like, like we're like a snake that just shed its skin, and we're a little bigger, or we're a little lighter, right? So that's a beautiful pairing that Alexis has done today to bring, your work in with mine, as they complement each other. I feel well. Ancestral clearing is was pioneered by is a modality that was pioneered by a man named Howard Wills, who lives on Kauai, and it was later developed and taught, further developed and taught, and then like labeled ancestral clearing by a man named John Newton of healthbeyondbelief.com, who teaches this process and who says, you know, when he does his trainings, learn what I do and then make it your own. And so with my background in, you know, neurophysiology and yoga and, you know, other things that I do, the answer, and I've worked for a year in Gabor Mate's compassion inquiry process, which is so helpful because it opened the door for me in a way where now I can bring my heart in, because my heart's there anyway. You're working with someone else, and they say something, and it activates you, and now you're doing this energetically, because you're all, you know, like you're in your stuff when you're in a session with a client. Well, in traditional psychotherapy, you're not allowed to own that. In compassionate inquiry, we own that. We own that, because you want to keep the field clear and the trust going between you and the client, and they can pick this up at a heartbeat, right? They might not be able to name it, that they could feel it, right? So that was very helpful for me. Let me bring the offering that I wanted to bring today. We're going through, I don't even have words at this point, and I write about the times I've started a journal on a almost daily basis under the name Sacred Rebel on Substack. That's tracking, like I'm actually tracking this moment from about sometime in February, I think early in February onward, and looking at the question, how do I stay in these times and meet this moment with my heart open? That's kind of been the question. So, because we're all on an evolutionary path, as Anna spoke about, I'm on a path, you know, and the path isn't necessarily linear. It is what it is. Right? So I'm gonna bring an ancestral clearing, which is a prayer practice, by the way, for evolutionary emergence, clearing the path for your becoming. Now, ancestral clearing uses the concept of forgiveness to mean offering up that which no longer serves us. So it's a very specific use of the word forgive. We're offering up that which no longer serves us. Who are we offering it up to? We're offering it up to Source. If we could have released it, you know, by ourselves, we would have by now. And because we're having difficulty with it, we asked Source to help us, which is the core of this practice. It's Source, or whatever you call that thing that made all this, the thing you want to offer up, and then we do it with humility and gratitude. So if you could just notice what you're feeling as sensation in the body in this moment, and maybe give it a number from 0 to 10 in intensity. Like I feel my sitting bones on the chair and seat, and I feel my feet on the floor, and I feel a little bit of kind of prickly stuff on the top of in the crown of my head, a little bit under here where my glasses are, and I give all that sensation maybe about a 3.5, just as an example. And I want you to just notice what that number is, and notice that sensation. Breathe normally, and just let these words pass over you. O Divine Spirit, creator of all that is and all that you are, thank you for the many bountiful blessings you've bestowed upon us and our lineages. We come to you knowing that you're always here with us in all your great and vast nature. We ask humbly and gratefully for us and all our relationships and all of our ancestors and all of their relationships throughout time, space, dimension, realms, lifetimes, and incarnations. For all inherited energies passed down to us that were the residue of wounds we didn't create, but were born into. For all the stories we created because of them. For all the misunderstanding, the blame, and suffering that ensued in the lineage as a result. Please help us all to forgive one another and forgive ourselves. Please and thank you. For all the times any of us were abandoned, neglected, or otherwise betrayed by parents, caregivers, partners, or the community, in love, in friendship, or leadership across the family line. For letdown that we felt and all the deep mistrust of life and love that followed. For not feeling safe to receive support and for any fears of being abandoned if we turned into joy, visibility, or our truth. Please help us all to forgive and release one another and forgive anyone involved directly or indirectly for all of it. Please and thank you. For all addiction and escapism patterns any of us fell into, whether alcoholism, drug abuse, emotional eating, gambling, control, achievement, codependency, or any other pattern that kept us from looking within ourselves for the answer to our wholeness. For the legacy of numbing our pain as a survival strategy and how it kept us from living life fully and allowing ourselves to feel you, Creator, flowing through us. For all the limiting beliefs, judgments, and conclusions we made or had and that kept us playing small, not able to reach our full potential in life. Please help us all to forgive one another and forgive ourselves. Please and thank you. For all the experiences we had of injustice, persecution, systematic oppression, and other betrayals of authority figures, teachers, coaches, doctors, nurses, lawyers, judges, spiritual leaders, and anyone else we look to for leadership. For the times we felt anger and profound letdown at you, Creator, and for how that weighed upon us in our lives. And for any spiritual grief we felt that made trust and surrender seem impossible. Please help us all to forgive one another and forgive ourselves for once and for all. Please and thank you. For all survivor's guilt, for any shame we carried while others in the family or the community suffered. For any inherited guilt from past hurts or harms done, and for any time we were unable to stop harm from happening. Please help us all to forgive one another and forgive ourselves, please, and thank you. For all sexual hurts and wrongs and any time they were minimized or went unspoken. For all secrets within the family and how in such darkness those secrets festered into wounds. For any shame carried in the family around our innate animal nature, and for any confusion or conflict about any of our relationships to sensuality, boundaries, or expression. Please help us all forgive one another and forgive ourselves, please, and thank you. For all conflicting DNA, any energetic tug-of-war in the lineage, opposing values, unresolved family feuds or vendettas, or mixed ancestral allegiances. For any negative residue left from the genetic imprints of both the oppressed and the oppressor. And for any felt sense of identity confusion and not knowing where we belong. Please help us all to forgive one another and forgive ourselves, please, and thank you. For how any of these wounds kept us playing small in life. For any fear of being seen or heard or stepping into a position of leadership. For the times we felt we had to suffer in order to earn love or even have a sense of belonging. For any time we fell prey to subconscious sabotage around success, intimacy, or abundance. For any cycle of perfectionism or any imbalance between giving and receiving. Please help us all to forgive one another and forgive ourselves. Please and thank you. Please help us step into our power and find freedom from the burdens of the lineage. And please help us to release these patterns and turn back to realizing our inherent wholeness that can never be diminished. Please help us to reclaim that space within us where our true self was, is, and always will be. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. Please and thank you. And just take a nice big breath in and let it out. And notice how that feels and what the number is compared to when we started. Is there anything you noticed, or is the number big or smaller? Did the energy move? What was your experience?
For me, I felt like as you finished, felt that I was floating in a sea. And the number was originally 4, and it was confusion, perhaps, that I felt. And by the time you finished, it was 2, and I felt ungrounded. However, I felt that I was in a sea of history,
Ah.
you know,
Mhm.
and emotion, and kind of like I felt disconnected or disembodied
Mm.
from my physical self, but not in a,
Mm.
it wasn't negative.
Mhm.
You know, it was just like an acknowledgement of all of the trauma.
We're all these different beings all at once,
Yeah, like
I think is what you're describing. Yeah, that's a beautiful description. Thank you so much.
yeah, like aeons of stuff.
Yeah, amazing.
You, what did you feel, Anu?
I just find I find prayers quite soothing.
Hmm.
So I was simply soothed by the prayer.
Yeah, right. Hmm. Thank you. Hmm. It's a beautiful practice. I will say that there's usually a shift, and one way or another, and usually it's in the direction that you're both speaking of. Every once in a while, and I think in 11 and a half years that I've been in this practice, I think less than a handful of people have not been able to move. Like if they started at a 6, most people go down to a 3 or a 2. We like to leave them. We don't like to leave them if it's still a 3. We like to kind of move it to. We like to work with them until the energy. Every once in a while, we get somebody who ends up from a 10 to a 6, and just that's where they are. And it's interesting because, and Anna may have something to say about this, or even you, Alexis. A couple reasons. One is when I do live events, invariably, it's so interesting. Somebody will show up, and there'll be maybe like 40 people, that maybe somewhere between 20 and 40, 45 people that show up to these events. Someone will show up, and the energy is, you can't help me no matter what you do. And you can see it, it's kind of obvious. but they always ask for the help. It's like, that's interesting. So they're asking for help and they're doing this, and creator can take care of all of it, but it's how much that they can allow themselves to offer up, or kind of is the mediating force there, as far as I can see it. So that's one veil that I have noticed. Another one is um, if they're have been drinking alcohol, or they're on an opiate, that creates a veil as well, where we still get somewhere, but we don't get as far. And the other one is if someone is carrying trauma, unresolved trauma in their system, and their strategy is to dissociate, they can't actually be present in the process, in the ancestral clearing process, so they can't feel. They can't just be present and breathe and allow. And so that creates a veil. So those are just some mediating factors that I've experienced in the practice. And thank you so much, Alexis and Anna, for letting me share.
Thank you. May I just ask you a question?
Sure.
You mentioned a website. It was something beyond belief.
Yeah, Health Beyond Belief, healthbeyondbelief.com. Yeah.
Health Beyond.
Oh my, Alexis, you would love John. He's amazing.
What's John's surname?
His name is John Newton.
John Newton.
John Newton. Yeah. He's extraordinary. And he's his own person. I've learned a lot from him. And then, sometimes he comes in with things and I have no idea what he's talking about, I love that.
The other thing that I wanted to say to you wasn't a question. It was just an observation about something that you said about people not allowing themselves to be healed in the process, but coming to you with their problems anyway. It made me think of people's saboteur, that we all have this saboteur, or we have a sage, our wise self, or we have a sabotaging self. And it's almost like they're coming to you ready to make you wrong, right? In a way, like with the saboteur energy. That was my observation when you were saying that, some people live in that saboteur energy, right? And they thrive in it.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I'd like to hear Anu about this, but I'll just make this comment and then I'm going to be quiet. First of all, I see that in the room, and that person, I don't take it personally, because now it just shows me kind of like, oh, I need to use this approach. It just shows me kind of the lay of the land, the landscape I'm working with. And of course, as soon as I think I'm doing the work and not creator, then now I'm taking on their stuff. So that's an important thing. The other thing that's so interesting about this dynamic is, from a nervous system point of view, we're not made to run and rest at the same time. Just like we can't defend and connect at the same time. And we're just kind of not made. It's not the way the nervous system works. So when someone comes in and they're defending, and yet they're reaching for connection, the survival, the way I understand it, the survival brain in that case is going to be the default and going to be the one that wins. So now because it just wants to survive. It's not worried about anything else. That's the imperative. The connection is not a thing. Survival's the thing. So, and working with that is kind of like recognize it and then see that we've got a defense up, and then, okay, that person, what do they really want? They want to be seen and heard and acknowledged. I don't have to agree with them, but acknowledged. And that is a path to helping them do this? Thank you so much for the question and letting me talk. And now I'd love to hear from Anu.
Yeah, this is kind of a good, pondering this question is a good segue into speaking. I often find with this type of person that deep down they want to be rescued by their parents. They're coming from a victim consciousness, and they're coming from an arrogance about what they should have received, which they didn't. And they want you, the therapist, to give them what their parents weren't able to give to them. And so my way of working with this has changed over the years. The teacher that I was with for the longest time is very challenging. And if someone comes with this kind of attitude, then he used to say, just go back to your chair. You're not ready for a constellation. But I found more gentle ways of, of dealing with such circumstances. So one of the principles of collective trauma healing is honoring limits. So at the deeper level, I attune myself to however the client expresses themselves, whatever issue that they express and whatever attitude that they come with, I am attuning myself, what is the limit of this client right now? And based on my awareness of that limit, what would be the most conscious response? Now, my response is always tailored to what is the limit of this specific client. So the general example that was given, there could be a myriad of responses, but sometimes I might just sit there and wait in non-doing, so the client understands that I'm not gonna rescue them. I'm just there, I'm presencing, but I'm not doing anything. I'm waiting for an impulse to come from them. And when I wait long enough, something in the unconscious of the client begins to understand that their strategy is not working, and the impulse will come out of them, but it will be within the limit of what they're ready for in that moment. Every client that comes is ready for something. That's why they came in the first place. This is why I don't necessarily see, I don't think there's any, like different people have different ways. My teacher likes to challenge, and I think sometimes a strong masculine challenge can also really help a person to orient to what it is that they really want and what it is that they really need. Yeah, but for me, I feel like the gentler approach to connecting with what's ready to shift, because there's always something ready to shift. It's just sometimes the readiness is more and sometimes it's less. So yeah, that's my response to the question. Maybe I could just take a moment in silence to kind of transition from Elizabeth's flow more into the purity of my own flow. So the term transgenerational healing is an interesting one, because it gives the impression that the foreground of the work is that previous generations get healed, and that somehow that's the most important thing. I think what's most important is me letting go of my need to fix anyone in a previous generation, my parents, my grandparents, and going back however many generations you want to go. We very often have, and it's a very human thing, we all have this unconscious impulse to rescue and to fix. And very often it comes from wanting to rescue our parents or our grandparents from unresolved traumas in the system which have not been brought to light. So the impulse we often have is we want to try to fix our ancestors before ourselves. We put others, and then that pattern continues on in our relationships, in every aspect of our lives, that we put others before we put ourselves. We prioritize the needs of others before our own needs. So this work of transgenerational healing is actually really very much about accepting ourselves exactly as we are, finding deep self-love and acceptance for who I am, and within the context of, within the systemic context. So I stand in this field of many ancestors, and I recognize my place here in this field. I am the child of my parents, the grandchild of my grandparents, the great-grandchild of my great-grandparents. I am the firstborn child. I am older than my brother. Order is very important to the flow of love in the system. So when I take my place and I stand in my true place, then any unresolved traumas in the system which are on their way to deeper healing will be activated. The more I take myself out of the picture, remove my nosiness to other people's business in my system, and step back from my parents and my grandparents and recognize how small I am, and that I don't have the power to change anything or to fix anyone, then healing shifts in the system are allowed to take place. And actually, they really happen more often when I care less about helping anyone. So transgenerational healing is primarily about accepting and loving myself as I am within the systemic context. Elizabeth said something at the beginning of her session about starting from presence and recognizing when there's a block to presence, and then working with that. One of the things within family constellations that we recognize as being the greatest block to authentic presence is judging one's parents. Because a judgment, what we have to look at, what is a judgment? A judgment is a rejection. And that which I reject, I become. That which I judge or reject, I become that. I bind myself to that at the deeper level, unconsciously. I entangle myself with that. So by judging my parents or anyone in my family system, I entangle myself in the system. So transgenerational healing is very much about realizing myself as love. The more I realize myself as love, the more into a deeper presence I get with myself, the less attention I'm paying to what everyone else is doing, actually. What everyone else is doing doesn't really matter so much. What I'm doing, or how I'm being in this moment right now, that's the only important thing. Am I connected to my heart, and what is my attitude right now? Is my attitude one of honoring, one of gratitude, one of a willingness to feel difficult, challenging feelings, whether it's rage or anger or shame or guilt. You know, all of those feelings are welcome. Can I let myself feel that fully, express that fully in the moment that I feel that? Can I be really, truly who I am? And can I also be what's blocking me from who I am? Can I be that fully, you know, in this moment? Can I let myself be fully that which is blocking me from being who I am? And very often the block to who I am is that and this is something we see in family constellations, what's blocking me from being who I am is that I'm busy at the unconscious level trying to be someone else. So I'm identified with a parent or a grandparent at the unconscious level without even realizing that. I'm identified with a trauma of a parent or a grandparent or a sibling of them, or even possibly a perpetrator in the system or a victim in the system, because anyone in the system who has been murdered or any murderers in the system are also part of the family system, and they have to be included. And when they're not honored and included and they are judged, then often we pick up that energy and we behave in a murderous way or a perpetrating way. So we see very often in Jewish families that there are some members of the family that behave very much like Nazis, yeah, or I can give many examples of cultures that have been in conflict over generations, where the perpetrator-victim dynamic shifts over generations. So the Jews go from being victims to being perpetrators. Germans go from being perpetrators to being victims. Inclusion and working to include everything as it is, and coming out of this idea that there is right and wrong, and that when wrong happens, I need to expend a lot of energy attempting to attain some kind of justice. When I'm able to look at life and look at what has gone before through the eyes of the heart, then I'm not seeing any more right and wrong. I'm just seeing everything as it happened. Everything as it happened. And including that. Everything is included exactly as it happened. Yeah. So it sounds simple, but it's not. It takes a long time and a lot of work to really embody this. I can't even say that I'm fully there yet. I'm still on my way. But certainly working with the ancestors and family constellations and systemic ritual has helped me further on that path to be more loving, more compassionate, more accepting, and more inclusive. Yeah. Yeah, so maybe I think I alluded to it a little bit. I'll just say one more brief thing about the order. So in family constellations, one of the orders of love, as Bert Hellinger used to call them, is order. There's belonging, order, and balance. Everyone that's part of the system has an equal right to belong in the system. And there are dynamics of giving and receiving between parents and children that are different than the dynamics of giving and receiving between partners and husband and wife. And then there's order. Those who came first are higher up the order. So love moves through the family system more strongly when everyone is standing in their place. Now, I say that like it's an often occurrence. It's not. I don't think there is any family system where everyone is standing in their place. The very nature of systems is they're imperfect, the same as the very nature of humanity is that every human is imperfect. So every system is disorganized. But what we discover in family constellations is that where everyone stands in the order based on when they were born and how long they've been around, the love can move stronger through the system. So very often we carry negative patterns and difficult experiences when, for instance, I, as a child of my mother, behave like the partner of my mother, or the father of my mother. Yeah, I behave like the father or the partner of my mother. This brings me into a negative relationship with my mother, and then I end up unconsciously carrying unresolved trauma from the past of the system behind my mother. Yeah. But when I come back to my place and I recognize myself as a child of my mother, yeah, then I'm challenged to feel something inside of myself, which is usually guilt. Yeah. And underneath the guilt there is pain. So the first step is I feel the guilt, and rather than allow the guilt to drive me back into the position of being the partner or parent of my mother, I let myself feel the guilt and drop under that into the pain body, and then feel the pain. Of course, there has to be enough resources and support available for me to be able to do this, because if I have a traumatized nervous system, then it's going to be a bit of a challenge to get there. But this is where ancestral work, family constellations comes in handy, is that there's more support available than, for instance, when I'm meditating on my own. So I can get the support I need to feel the guilt, to feel the pain, to digest the pain, and then to feel more relaxed in my position as the child of my mother, you know? And then, oh wow, it's so light here, and it's way more playful. Oh my God. And then I begin looking away from my family system towards the future. And I feel this lightness in my chest, like, oh wow, I can really play with life now, you know? It's really possible for me to play with life now. And it's because I'm standing in my place. So, yeah. So I really want to invite us all to slow down. That's the first thing. So I'm just inviting us all to really take a moment to slow down. The heart and the soul move very slowly. So when we slow down, we get more in touch with the intelligence of the heart and the soul. Yeah, I'm really just slowing down. Really bringing our awareness to our heart for a moment. Yeah. And the invitation is just open your awareness for a moment and without trying to find someone, just see if there's someone in your family that wants to drop into your consciousness right now. Somebody that you have a little tension with or some difficulty. And then you just see that person standing in front of you. And you just take a moment to look them in the eyes. And you let yourself feel that for a moment. And I just want you to take note of how you feel right now. Is it sadness? Is it anger? Is it guilt? Is it shame? Is it joy? Is it peace? What is it that you feel right now? Just make a little note of that inside of yourself. And then in your first language, I invite you to say to this family member, my love for you is so great. Sometimes I feel your, and then whatever you're feeling, you put that feeling at the end. My love for you is so great. Sometimes I feel your. And then you say to them, please bless me if I choose to feel this a little less. And then the invitation is that you very gently and subtly bow your head in honor of this person, but this is not an empty action. Only bow your head to the degree to which feels authentic to how much you're willing to and capable of honoring this person in this moment right now. Don't push yourself beyond the limit. Really respecting the limit of the bow. How deep can I honor and bow to this person that I see in front of me right now? And whenever you find that point, however deep in the bow that point is, so a bowing goes all the way from bowing one's head and upper body to kneeling on the floor and then lying face flat on the floor with palms towards the sky. But you can just bow anywhere on that spectrum that feels most authentic in this moment, right now. And then really give yourself a moment to feel that movement. Yeah. And really bringing your awareness to your heart as you engage a little bit that honoring movement. Yeah. And then the person in the family who you have been looking directly at then turns towards the past of the system. So this person is no longer looking at you, this person is looking to where the tension really belongs. Yeah, and the invitation is to really take a moment to feel what that's like, to have the ancestor turn away and look towards the past. And then the ancestor turns around to look towards you again. And they say to you, now I see you. And you can say that to them as well. Now I see you. Yeah. Yeah, and very slowly just imagine that ancestor dissolves backwards into the system. And you find yourself becoming aware of your body again and bringing your awareness back into whatever space you're occupying right now. So for whoever is listening to this, this generic systemic movement may have had some positive effect, and for some you may not have got all the way through, and you may not be feeling that great. If that is the case, then I would encourage you to reach out to a therapist that works with system and complete the movement. Or you can reach out to me as well, you're very welcome. Otherwise, thank you for bringing your presence here today.
May I ask you some questions?
Yeah, sure.
When you said, can I be what's blocking me from who I am? Were you talking about being the block?
Yeah. This is what, when Osho talks about totality, this is what he's talking about. My master is Osho. I love him. I didn't really fully understand what he meant about being total for a while. And then I started to get it. He's not coming from a space of saying we should do this or we shouldn't do that. He's not presenting really a value system. He's saying it doesn't matter what you do, just do it fully. If you're going to be blocked, then be fully blocked, consciously. Be the block fully. Express that. If the block is anger, then express the anger. If the block is shame, then feel the shame. Whatever it is, just go into it fully, you know? And a block, what is a block? A block is an excluded part of the self, yeah? Or an excluded family member, or a split off part of the soul, however you want to language it based on what system you're coming from. A block is that there is a part that's not being listened to. So when I am fully willing and 100% total to go into the block and to feel that and to express it fully, then I'm fully including the block, and there's no longer a block. The block dissipates. There's no block. Where's the block? The block's only there when I'm not willing to feel it or not able to feel it because I'm too traumatized and I need support. Yeah.
So you're saying by accepting the block, or by looking and acknowledging the block and looking at it,
Accepting. Many people want to hold on to the block like it's some kind of one of those blankets that children hold on to and they don't want to let go of when they're about 4 or 5 years old. You know, many people just want to grip onto the block, and they come for a session, and the solution is to honor the block, but they don't want to do that because they don't want to let it go. So then you have to scale back the solution, yeah? So then the sentence that I use, where somebody is relating to a traumatized ancestor that they're carrying something for, that they're not willing to give back whatever it is that they're carrying, then I use the sentence, I need some more time. I need some more time, or we carry it together is actually one of the strongest sentences in my work. We carry it together. Because the sentence we carry it together, it's a more gentle approach to activating the return of ancestral trauma from the self back to the ancestors. Rather, when you say to a traumatized person who's carrying trauma from the ancestors, you need to give it back, the first thing they're going to do is grip onto it more tightly. Yeah, if you acknowledge that we carry it together, which is also a challenge for some who are holding it really tight, you know, but it's a softer step to carry it together. Like sometimes I'm like, can you let me carry just like maybe 3% of that? Yeah, 3 or 4%, just 5% to me, 95% to you. Yeah, you carry your ancestor trauma 95%, I carry a little bit. How does that feel in your body? Oh, that feels good. What about 20%? Yeah, so then we work up where they're equally willing and able to carry the trauma with me, the therapist. But carrying the trauma with me, the therapist, is the same as letting it go, in a way. Yeah, depersonalizing the relationship between the client and the trauma. Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that?
And some clients need to be left there for some time. They're not going to get all the way to letting it go fully and arriving into peace. You know, there are some people that facilitate family constellations that are always pushing for that. Yeah. And it can be very re-traumatizing. It's about recognizing what the soul is ready for and only going that far and respecting the limit.
So just going back to the block for a moment.
Yes.
Is it correct that if I'm thinking, if I acknowledge the block and make the block part of myself, then
Yeah.
in some way that I'm dissolving it by accepting it into myself?
Of course, yeah, because you are alive and you are conscious. So if you become the block, then the block is no more. There's no more block. It's just you expressing yourself in some kind of socially unacceptable way, where we need to come to terms that actually it doesn't really matter what's socially acceptable.
That's really profound, because it kind of takes me to what you both said about starting from presence, and I do that when I teach singing. I talk to my students, or I personally do it when I sing. I find it very, very important to start from a point of nothingness, or being in my center. You know, I cannot have cacophony or you know, any kind of verbalization. I have to start from nothing, and there needs to be quiet. Otherwise, it won't be the best performance that it can be, and the best
That's
delivery.
beautiful. This reminds me of I'm going to send you something from I need to remember where it was. I think it was in the Book of Blessings by John O'Donoghue. He talks about beginnings, the beauty of beginnings. Um, it was something around that. But this idea that when you start something in the way that you just described, the essence of that ripples throughout the experience, throughout the development of whatever it is you've started,
Well,
basically.
you reminded me of that, so thank you. And like also like acknowledging the block, and by becoming it, it's so profound. It's so counterintuitive as well, because you don't think of that. Nobody naturally goes there. Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, a block, what a block can be defined as I reject myself.
Right.
There's a part of myself that I'm rejecting, or there's a member of my family that I'm rejecting, or there's an aspect of my family's behavior I'm rejecting, or something is being rejected. So when I mean, dancing, I love Five Rhythms ecstatic dance as well, because in the dance floor, it's also really easy to move through these things as well. Because when I see someone on the dance floor moving in a way that I judge or that I have some activating reaction to, then I just mirror them.
Oh wow. Well, that brings me to something that you also said, which is by judging, I become entangled. That was a very, very profound statement for me.
Yes.
I thought of the current president of America that can be, very much like that.
Well, no, the problem with, and this may be a contentious subject for Elizabeth because she's American, but the problem, the problem is nobody wants to own their inner Trump. This is the problem.
Yeah,
Yeah. Trump is an opportunity
I
to
agree.
take ownership of our own inner fascism.
I agree.
Yeah. And if we can really begin seeing it that way and engaging from that space, then Trump is actually going to be the grit in the oyster that creates the spiritual pearl, which sounds insane, but it's true.
No, it doesn't sound insane if you really, really go to a place of deeper understanding, right?
Yeah.
I think we understand. We understand. Um, it's very profound what you said, and that kind of whole entanglement thing. By judging, I become. It's really. It's not as before. It's not where my
Freedom,
mind naturally goes.
freedom is a decision from the heart. It, freedom is not a decision from anywhere else. It has to come from the heart.
Wow.
The only way that I can be free fully is to choose from the heart, and that means honoring and accepting and loving everything as it is.
You said at the beginning, acceptance means profound healing, and that really resonated with me. Really resonated with me because there's so much non-acceptance, of ourselves, of our bodies, of the world, of people, of situations, of behaviors.
Nobody wants to own themselves. No, nobody wants to own themselves. Everyone's pointing their fingers and blaming the external. And this is why we need more meditation in the world, because if people are more willing to go inside themselves and actually take responsibility for their own energy body, then yeah, everything would shift radically.
This is my last question. What's wrong with putting others' needs before your own?
um, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's my direct answer to your question. But I feel like there's a subtitled question there, which is what I'm trying to draw out by saying that.
What's wrong? Sorry, I'm just gonna flip it on its
There's
head.
there's another question underneath that, which is I'm trying to get you to ask.
What's wrong with putting your own needs first?
That's a really good question. I really love that inquiry. That's a great inquiry. Yeah.
What do you think, Elizabeth?
I love it too. So this is why we included that in the ancestral clearing prayer, any imbalance between giving and receiving.
Right.
That's what that's pointing to, which is heart work. Heart work is all about a balanced heart chakra, is this balance between giving and receiving, and timing, the heartbeat, right? Um, I had a role as a mom uh, when I was younger. Um, I had a son and a husband, and my son and my husband would get in this thing, and I always felt like I needed to insert myself in the middle of that, and and the kind of the backstory of that, and this is true for every woman that I've brought this up to, so they all tend to agree. As soon as I was old enough to walk, I was put into service. And so my job was to take care of others. And whatever energy was left over, that's what I got. That was kind of the the frequency so enter being a mom and seeing discord between, these two. Oh, I have to get in there and like mediate that situation. And so I became the peacemaker, and then that becomes this triangle of like difficulty, right? This classic triangle, right? So I get into I had chronic pain for years, and I went into this pain management program, and I was there for a couple of months, and while I was there, my son and my husband get in this thing. And I hear about it. I hear about it like on the phone, and I'm like, oh my God. And I go to my counselor, and I'm like, I got to get on the phone and get between these two and fix this problem. And they're like, no, you don't. And I'm like, yeah, I do. Like, no, you don't. And I was like, wait a minute, what do you know that I don't? Right? It was great. And this was when they were like, you're here to take care of you. That's their relationship. They'll take care of it between them, right? And that was a light bulb moment for me, because it never occurred to me otherwise than to try and get in there, and I just didn't. It was just, I had no other experience. And I was so grateful that that they brought that in, right? Um, because it wasn't my job. I just didn't understand that, because of my orientation. You don't know what you don't know until you know it.
There's a really deep lesson in that I haven't learned yet. Um, and I'm trying to figure it out as I'm asking the question. Um, how much can we allow things to be as they are and just acceptance, and how much do we need to take responsibility for and heal, do something. Do we need to do something sometimes? And how do we know the difference?
I would love to answer that in the context of the exercise that Anno brought to us, and then I'd like to hear what Anno has to say. So,
Yeah.
so I'm kind of trying to answer both of you at the same time. So I had, when I was born into my family, I was by about the time I was 4, I was like, oh my God, what am I doing in this family? I mean, there with the history and the violence and I mean, it was just like, and I felt it, and I saw it, and nobody talked about it. And I just, because I didn't know what else to do, I took it on as a burden. And I really didn't understand what was happening other than I felt it, um, because I was 4, right? But later, when I got into this work, John, I had happened to have a session with him, and he was like, well, this is coming up, and he was asking me about it, and I was like, oh, there's this thing, right? And he helped me begin to just that one session that we had, that one clearing, helped me to begin to unravel it. But as Anna was talking about, I had a relationship with this thing, you know, I had a relationship with this thing, and I was, you know, in my suffering, I was holding on, and I didn't really understand that. It took a little while for me to kind of awaken, to grow my consciousness, grow my capacity as to clear the trauma, right? And one summer, I sat with this question. It didn't take long, but it took me the summer kind of to get into it. Who would I be without the story of my family? Because the story of my family and the meaning I was making of it was the block. And so I sat with the question. And the answer was, I don't know. And that was okay. Because I had built enough capacity and enough sense of kind of coming back home to me in my heart that all I needed was presence and a breath and my own kind of sense of safety within my own heart, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Just before you answer, and I would really like to say, you know, what I saw when you were saying that, when I was relating to myself, was that not only myself, but like people in the world, everyone, you know, we all say, I'm damaged, I'm broken, you can't fix me. And, you know, what you said this evening, Anna, was like, by accepting that we're damaged and broken and that you can't fix me, that it doesn't exist anymore, right? Just if we accept it. And I'm just kind of reeling with that thought.
I mean, it's still there, but I'm just not suffering.
Right.
Yeah. It's the difference between suffering or not suffering, that's all. I'm still broken, I still feel the pain, but I'm just not suffering with the pain. Yeah.
You're not in it, even though
Not, well, we would talk about not being identified in it in constellation work. This is one of the things meditation helps with as well, is getting disidentified from the suffering.
and then it's the whole pain body thing, right? As well, and being separate from that, not identified. So going back to what Elizabeth said and your response to,
Can you go back to the question that you asked that triggered Elizabeth's response?
Well, he was asking about doing and being and responsibility versus just accepting what is.
Yes.
And I was trying to get to, by sitting with the block, the meaning that I was making of this thing. No, I'm not going to accept what is because I don't like it. Right? By just like sitting in that and I didn't do anything. I didn't have to go see John. I didn't have to go like do a yoga class. I didn't have to like I have to go. I didn't have to do anything. I just had to presence myself and be in the field of what was coming up. And so there was no doing, there was just being. And in that, there was an opening. And you know what? The heart and the breath take care of it all. It just,
Yes.
and that's where the suffering ends. You know, the story of my family is still there, but it has no purchase anymore. It's just a storyline. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like we have this biological nervous system based, but also soul based need to take care of each other. It's the way in which species are able to survive and flourish and maintain themselves over generations. So we have this inbuilt response on many levels to take care of each other, and it feels very collectively oriented. Um, it's also trauma based. You know, like when we're a small child, very early in our development, and we're looking to we're looking towards the eyes of the mother, and the mother is dissociated. She's in her soul. She's looking somewhere else. Yeah, and so I can share a personal experience. So when I was about 6 months old, my mother lost her mother and her grandmother when I was 6 months old. So my mother was experiencing a lot of grief during a time in my development when I really needed her presence of eyes. So what I internalized from that as a very young baby was this notion that in order for me to have human relationships, in order for me to survive, I need to be for others more than I am for myself. Because in that early age of 6 months old, I felt that I had to carry something for my mother. I had to feel her grief, or it would be my survival. I would die. You know, the consequence is death. So, and I'm not saying that we all experience exactly the same trauma, but I feel like we all experience some degree of trauma at an early age, which gives us the message that in order to survive, I need to do something for the other, basically. I mean, in family constellations, it's similar, but it's slightly different. Every person wants to rescue their parents. Everyone has the impulse that they want to rescue a parent from an unresolved trauma from a previous generation, even when the conscious mind knows that that past is gone, it no longer exists, whichever family members are connected to it are now dead, but somehow, at the unconscious level, we still go into this rescue impulse as a way to try to help something in the system. An extreme example of that is suicide, actually. So very often, the unconscious level of suicide is that the person committing suicide is looking towards somebody in the system who has died in a difficult way and saying, I will die in your place, or um, or I will save you from dying, basically. And so unconsciously they kill themselves with this wrong unconscious idea that somehow they're doing something for the system. But obviously it's a wrong idea because the person they're trying to save is already dead. You know? So these rescuing impulses can present themselves as syndromes and all kinds of illness and psychotic behaviors.
We're approaching the end of our session, and I wanted to ask if there were any closing thoughts or things that were left unsaid that you wanted to say, questions that you wanted to ask, statements that you wanted to make. Elizabeth?
Thought I muted. Thank you. This was such a powerful session. What a day this has been. I spent an hour and a half working with Linda Tai as she brought in a course on missing pieces of attachment theory, which is all on bringing the ancestral aspect into attachment theory. So, and then we have this. It's just like, what an afternoon. I would like to just share with you my experience of the exercise you took us through.
Mm-hmm.
So the ancestor that dropped in was my mother, who passed in 92. And when I looked into her eyes, my answer was, my statement was, I love you, I feel your despair.
Mm.
And it was so profound. She turned around and she, her despair was because her mother was killed in the Second World War, the source of it. And the whole field cleared.
Mm.
the whole, like her field, my field, the whole, it was very interesting. So thank you for that. I thought I would share with that with you because it was quite powerful at my end. Thank you.
Yeah, sometimes that's enough, is to just be aware that I'm feeling something that is belonging to a parent or an ancestor. Just that just that small piece alone is like can be a domino effect, and then nothing more is needed. It's almost like everything that happens in an ancestral healing movement or a constellation happens after that point and is triggered by that initial awareness, I think. Um, After that point, there's almost nothing to do. Just allow the movement to develop itself and unfold how it does, and just kind of hold space for that in the best way that you know how. Um, yeah, thank you for sharing that experience. I'm glad that it somehow touched you.
Is there anything that you want to
I
share?
really want to play the song by the Beatles, "All You Need Is Love." That's what I feel like doing right now, but it's Zoom, so you can't do that because, yeah, the music
Oh,
won't come through. But I'm playing it in my soul.
I love that. I would like to share my experience of your exercise, if I may.
Sure.
So it was my mother and my father
Uh,
together.
Double whammy.
Yeah, and they were both looking at me, and I felt so angry with them for me being older than them, and them having so much dysfunction and trauma. And now that my mother and my father both have dementia, I feel that they've kind of reverted to an almost childlike state. And not only have I had to play some kind of a role of parent in and as a child, um, I'm now in that role of seeing them in a childlike state. And it's funnily enough, my mother calling me. uh, and I felt such anger, and when I was bowing, I just accepted them for where they're at, for where they were at, and then they turned and faded, and I thought, okay, it's okay that they are where they are. So it was acceptance. So thank you for taking me to that place.
There's an extra piece here that I can
Go ahead.
um, that something about you taking responsibility for your life force and fully choosing it, uh, and really fully choosing it, and recognizing that your life force is so much bigger than any trauma that you experienced in relation to your parents, and that actually that whatever trauma you experienced in relation to your parents has acted as a food for your capacity to expand even more into that experience of life force and aliveness. That this is your birthright. What, and which sounds paradoxical because obviously the trauma happened after you were born, but in a way it's your birthright to take ownership of life force and your aliveness, you know, and to make the aliveness and your hunger for life bigger than any feelings of injustice that you have towards a trauma that you experienced in relation to your parents, you know, and that's your choice and your responsibility, Alexis. Nothing to do with them. You can own that fully if you choose it from the heart. To acknowledge that life is so much bigger than any trauma that you experienced in relation to them. This is your power.
I have to sit with that for a while.
Yeah.
I thank you. I gratefully received that. Thank you. I wrote a sentence that I would like to share, which is, we are the embodiment of healing, and we shine our light onto the whole world and for ourselves as well. Let's not forget to include ourselves.
Yes.
In a closing, I would like to do what I usually do on sacred segments and ask for a gratitude and a word of power. If I start, and then I'll ask Elizabeth, and then I'll ask you, Anu. My gratitude is for the ability to have humility, and my word of power is capacity.
Gratitude and
Beautiful, thank you. Mine is my gratitude is the power of the present moment, and my word is love.
My gratitude is towards the intelligence of life and how it brings me into these kinds of circumstances with people that I hadn't planned to meet constantly, every moment, every day. And my power word is life.
What a beautiful session this was. Really, really profoundly amazing. Thank you both very much.
Yeah, thank you for inviting and
Thank you.
opening
Thank you so much.
space.
Yeah, really grateful. Have
Yeah.
a beautiful evening.
You too.
Yeah, see you soon, I hope.
Nice to meet you both.
Thank you.
Bye. Take care. Bye now.
See you.